USVI BVI Friendship Day has been celebrated since 1972 as an opportunity for the USVI BVI governments and the entire Virgin Islands community to appreciate and reflect on the close ties which bind the neighboring territories and its people. It was a historical and cultural journey through the past at the 43rd anniversary of the USVI BVI Friendship Day celebration on Saturday, September 17th, as both territories gathered on the island of St. Thomas to celebrate their territorial ties of kinship and culture. Premier and Minister of Finance of the British Virgin Islands, Dr. the Honourable D. Orlando Smith, OBE, led a delegation to the festivities that were held under the theme, Ties Across the Water That Bind Us. The Premier, along with the delegation, was greeted by Governor of the United States Virgin Islands, Kenneth E. Mapp, and other United States Virgin Islands delegates. The observance of USVI BVI Friendship Day was designed to strengthen and build upon the bond of friendship, highlighting the commonalities, the shared history, and the shared culture of Virgin Islanders. Premier Smith said that Friendship Day provides both territories with a chance to renew old acquaintances, discuss old times, and to reflect on how they survived and flourished as a people, despite the many challenges they encountered in the past.
It was in 2006 that the format for Friendship Day was changed to be a more relaxed event, focusing on historical and cultural ties between our people. A more cultural feel was appropriate because when we come together as family, we see the features of our family in each of our faces. We hear about names like Turnbull. There's Governor Turnbull there with us from the British Virgin Islands, former Governor of the United States Virgin Islands. Letson, Thomas, Hodge, Smith, Blyden, among many others, and we cannot deny that we are all one people. Earlier this month, Governor Mapp and I convened the 7th meeting of the Inter-Virgin Islands Council here in St. Thomas. Indeed, the governments of the BVI and the United States Virgin Islands have never ceased to recognize the need for a consultative framework of this nature. The Inter-Virgin Islands Council continues to be a very useful mechanism for dialogue and intervention on issues of mutual concern across successive administrations in both of our territories. During our meetings, we received reports from the committees on health, education, mutual disaster preparedness, tourism, and law enforcement, among others. Governor Mapp, I publicly pledge the commitment of the government of the British Virgin Islands to continue to work with you and the members of your administration as we dialogue and seek solutions to the various challenges affecting our people. Today, however, we are taking time to reflect on the rich history and culture of our islands. And this is important for us to do so as we approach the centennial of Transfer Day here in the USVI. I too look forward to celebrating the 100th anniversary of Transfer Day with you next year. The official transfer of the Danish West Indies to the United States also marked a significant turning point in the history of the BVI. Under Danish rule, the Virgin Islanders moved freely throughout the two sets of islands, and many people migrated to the Danish West Indies from the British Islands. Thus, on Transfer Day in 1917, many BVI Islanders also became US citizens. Following the purchase, we lived through the Prohibition period. We exported livestock, wrong provisions, and charcoal, ensuring a mutual survival during difficult times. In later years, we saw the emergence of tourism in USVI. We also saw the BVI being granted permission to use the US dollar to facilitate our deep trading relationships. The development of tourism in the USVI facilitated the emergence of the tourism industry in the BVI as well. And even today, we are able to use our visitors to the BVI, able to come through St. Thomas. And I was told by Governor Mapp that they receive a very welcome as they come through St. Thomas on the way to Tortola. Last year, we were pleased to welcome Governor Mapp and his delegation to Tortola for the second Friendship Day celebration. We welcome his announcement that the territory flag of the BVI was being flown on government buildings across the United States Virgin Islands. Today, in the spirit of fellowship and friendship, I am pleased to advise that the flag of the British Virgin Islands, of the United States Virgin Islands, has been flying on the grounds of the Central Administration Complex in Rotown and will continue to fly until sunset on Sunday, 18th November. I trust that this display will help all Virgin Islanders to appreciate the peaceful and friendly relations between the territories and encourage them to do their part to preserve this relationship for the benefit of future generations of Virgin Islanders. Friendship Day gives us a chance to renew all acquaintances, discuss old times, and to reflect on how we survived and flourished as a people, despite the many challenges we have encountered in the past. This day also gives us an opportunity to discuss challenges we face in the future. This we must continue to do together in the spirit of unity, which has served us well over these many decades. Our ties of kinship and culture transcend our borders. That has always been the fundamental truth of our relationship, and this remains so today.
Governor Mr. Kenneth E. Mapp expressed gratitude to all for coming to the Friendship Day celebrations and said that he is committed to ensuring continued collaborations with the government of the Virgin Islands on issues of mutual interest.
Dr. Smith is correct, and I join him in our pledge to continue to work together on building and bridging the people of both Virgin Islands together. I believe, and I am very hopeful, and I will keep my eye on all of my team in Washington, D.C., I open that following the presidential election, there is a great expectation that some form of immigration bill may enter through the Congress before the change of administration, and it is on that vehicle that we are looking forward to getting the day visa passes enacted for the Virgin Islands and the Caribbean so that our people may travel freely among our islands to bridge their family ties and their relationships without a whole tremendous bit of paperwork and expenses. In the IVIC conference, we recognize that we can travel to the British Virgin Islands and to all of the other islands in the Caribbean, and our bands and musicians can go and work and earn money, but for folks to reciprocate and come into the Virgin Islands and musicians to come into the Virgin Islands, they have to pay quite a sum of money and get a visa, and it is a tremendous cost. I learned that these visas can run in the thousands of dollars, and for folks to come in and bring their music and their talent to the Virgin Islands could be very expensive, and to a great degree it is just simply prohibitive. And so we will continue our work and our efforts to ensure that we make this a seamless process, and Lieutenant Governor Potter is right. We have a number of members of the Congress and cabinet members that come through the Virgin Islands, and I think we take for granted that they don't really recognize that the difficulty, but how we live as a people and how we are related and intermarried and families, and when you look at the distances, how while we have to protect the whole nation, at the same time we want to be able to bridge our relationships and the things that we are doing and the way that we live in the Virgin Islands.
Governor Mapp also stated that efforts to ease travel between the Virgin Islands were a top priority following the Inter-Virgin Islands Council meeting earlier this month. The governor also added that for the first time since its inception in 1972, the 45th Friendship Day celebration will be held in St. Croix.
I am very happy, and I'm actually excited to talk about the vision of the Virgin Islands and how we are so robust in wanting to invest in our infrastructure and expand our islands and build our economy and really create a synergy for our people to not only have jobs, but to be able to go into business. And you know, in the Virgin Islands, we tend to be of the local kinfolk. Now I'm going to behave, Mrs. Malloy, and I'm going to try to say this all politically correct. We local kinfolk sort of learned in the early days that government was for us, and others would do well in the private sector. But if you look at the BVI, the people of the BVI are so intertwined in their economy, owning businesses, running their government, and being the overall part of everything that happened in the British Virgin Islands. And we want to do more of that in the U.S. Virgin Islands. We want to displace anyone and cause any harm or negativity to anyone, but we want our young people to know that not only that you can have a job, but you can have an opportunity to go in business, and you can have an opportunity to be rich and live on the hills and do all that you wish to do. And many of our young people are in sports and abroad, and they're doing very well. But we want to send that message that the British Virgin Islands really gives an example. I went there representing a client a couple of years ago, and I believe I was in Virgin Gorda, and I was taken to a beach where it had this wonderful restaurant and all of these palm trees, and it was huge, and the place was packed with tourists, and they were playing reggae music and the like. And a gentleman came over, and he introduced himself, and he had on his lax and his tam and everything, and he just looked, you know, like just anybody else, and I couldn't tell whether he was chopping coconuts or selling some Rasta garb. And then I learned in speaking with him, he owned the establishment. He was the proprietor, and he had a staff of people, and he was clearly being successful in what he was doing in that business. And that's a lot of pride to see that kind of ownership and the local people really into the economy and really being a part of the overall part of that territory. And we want to see some of that example taking place in the U.S. Virgin Islands. At the conference, you know, as this is our 43rd get-together of Friendship Day. And at the conference, one of our partners from the BVI made a suggestion. And the suggestion is that we have more cultural blending during the Friendship Day. We certainly have the talent, and we both display the talent, but how do we get together and maybe have a comparison of the way we cook and fix foods and the local dishes and the local artisans and what have you, so that we can have a showing of the culture, because we're going to find out that we're more alike than we are different. Next year, or the year after, when we host in the Virgin Islands again, I have committed, and I apologize to Dr. Smith, that last year I said we would do the celebration in St. Croix this year. And folks, I got a good tongue lashing for saying that when I came back to St. Thomas. And yes, I did, but that's okay. It wasn't my first tongue lashing, and it's probably not going to be my last. But I had to inform my folks here that the folks from the BVI asked about visiting St. Croix, that in all of the Friendship Days, they have never had the opportunity to have a celebration and experience St. Croix. And so when we host again, Dr. Smith and the delegation from the BVI, you have our word that we're going to put all of the pieces together, just as you had shown the people of the Virgin Islands a taste of Virgin Gorda. We're going to do everything in our power to give you a good taste of the Crucian side of the Virgin Islands.
As part of the cultural program, renditions of the Star-Spangled Banner and the Virgin Islands March were sung by the Charlotte Amalie High School Hawks Concert Choir, while British Virgin Islands singers Kenrico Whitley and Kewana Pope offered solos of God Save the Queen and Oh Beautiful Virgin Islands, respectively. Patrons were also treated to cultural performances by the II Cultural Dance Company, who traveled from St. Croix to entertain the crowd with classic quadrille dancing. One of the program highlights included the presentation of The Tale of Four Wobs, written by Glenn Davis, Carmen Dennis, and Denise Humphrey. The presentation explained the shared history and culture, recognizing the long-standing friendship, union, and neighborly relations between both territories.
The year was 1912. The Danes decided to build West Indian Company as a business. Ships bunkered. Now these were for the larger vessels. As you know, the Wobs was for the smaller ones. well, you would have business booming for a lot of folks. They had an opportunity to work. Many were porters, carrying things from the ships to local businesses. Others were longshoremen. They were the ones who loaded and unloaded the vessels. Now, these large ships, they not only traveled in the Western Hemisphere, they went as far as Europe, they went down through the Panama Canal, all the way over to Asia. So this was, in truth, a gateway to the world. So, in addition to all the work they had, a very important element was prohibition, and hence smuggling. One of the most famous smugglers have been immortalized in song. You hear it a lot in the BVI. And here was a lady who, according to the situation, she was on Sonny Henley boat. When the Coast Guard came close to the boat, she take her whole pantalette, and they don't mean wholly. It had pocket full of rum. But before she get catch, she threw the whole thing overboard, and of course, a song come out of it.
Hey, a woman had to make a living.
Oh, that's a gift. Over the side, over the side. Well, they know it too. But guess what? As much as I sing about her and ridicule her, we over here, we love her to death. You know something very important about her? She was actually a teacher in Jos Van Dyke's in the early years. But then by the time she come to St. Thomas, she made herself a dynamic part of our history, and particularly our political history. Because at one time, she was the president of the women's suffrage movement, fighting for women to get the right to vote. And she was the one that encouraged the great Edith Williams, Anna Vessup, and Eulalie Stevens Peterson to take the matter of women's right to vote to court in 1935, and they won. Yes. And interesting enough, 1 year later, the U.S. would pass the first Organic Act for the Virgin Islands, therefore universal suffrage. But 2 years before that, Ella Giff, the President of the United States, had just come to the islands for a visit, and somewhere in the area of Grand Hotel Square, she addressed him, "Mr. President, I have something for you." And she walked out most boldly, and when she placed her hand in her bosom, everybody got tense. Because now, they're not paranoid today like they were back then. But she pulled out a petition with several hundred signatures that demanded the removal of Paul M. Pearson as the first civilian governor. I should say, who was the first civilian governor. So this is the kind of power and influence she had. If it was not for her, we would not hear the greatness of Ralph M. Paiwanski. She actually influenced him into getting into politics. As you know, he became a senator, Senate president, and governor for most of the 1960s, where we saw some major industrial changes. So if I don't want her and want to keep ridiculing her, you give her to us. That's our war champion for women and other rights.
Thank you.
The day's cultural performance concluded with a cultural extravaganza performed by the Caribbean ritual dancers. Vendors were on hand to provide samples of foods, snacks, and crafts native to Virgin Islands culture. After the cultural program, both delegations moved on to lunch at the Ritz-Carlton, where toasts were made and both delegations exchanged gifts. Thank you for tuning in to the USVI BVI 43rd Friendship Day highlights. For all your official government news and latest updates, visit the government website at www.bvi.gov or follow us on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter at BVI Government.